About 18 years ago, Indian cricket had one of its strangest ever years. It had a lot of ups, a lot of downs, and a lot of grueling cricket and a very long season for the Indian cricketers. Not only did the year start with an ODI World Cup, but it ended with a T20 World Cup, and in between, India went on a 2.5 month long tour to Ireland, Scotland, as well as England. In totality, India played 13 ODIs, 3 test matches, some tour games, and all in all, during that period, they played 6 different teams in that tour. If this wasn't all, this was also the time when the ICL was there, and so the 2007 season also saw the Indian cricketers take part in that Indian Cricket League. But this isn't even the surprising bit. What stands out for 2007, apart from the T20 World Cup victory, is how this Indian team beat England in a test series in England itself after 21 long years. What made this win a lot more special was that India had come off a terrible World Cup where they had exited in the group stage, losing matches to teams like Bangladesh. And from there, for this team to bounce back and put in the kind of performance they did in England was something that truly helped India bounce back as a cricketing nation. This and a lot more to talk about, but it's very important for us to focus on that test series, how the events panned out, and how India eventually emerged victorious. But before we get into all of that, definitely hit that subscribe button. This was India's golden period when it came to the test batting lineup that they boasted of. Of course, in the opening slot, you had Virender Sehwag, you had Gautam Gambhir, and you had some switching out openers in the form of Wasim Jaffer as well as Dinesh Karthik. But beyond that, and looking at the middle order, it's probably one of the strongest, if not the greatest ever Indian batting lineup that we've ever had. Numbers 3 to 6 boasted of Rahul Dravid, Sachin Tendulkar, Saurav Ganguly, and VVS Lakshman. And after that, you still had the firepower of Mahendra Singh Dhoni to follow. This was easily a batting lineup that, in the right conditions, would absolutely pile on the runs, and they were not the easiest players to get out. As for the bowling unit, it was a mix of youth and experience, with the likes of S. Srishant, Irfan Pathan, RP Singh, all of these players in and around the circuit, and the experience of an Anil Kumble, a Harbhajan Singh, and also a Zair Khan in the mix. For this particular tour of England, however, both Harbhajan Singh as well as Virender Sehwag were out of the squad due to injuries. And because of this, India were not only one opener shot, but also one really good batter shot and a good bowler shot in the form of Harbhajan Singh. And by the time the test series was around the corner, India had already played a few tour games as well as a few ODIs, and as a unit, they were seeming to do very well. They had won most of these games. They had won the series against South Africa that took place in Scotland, and this is where we look at the first test match that took place at the Lord's Cricket Ground. And in fact, the first day of test cricket itself was very symbolic as to how the rest of the series was going to pan out. On what was a really good Lord's batting track, England won the toss and elected to bat first, and that's exactly how they played their cricket as well. It was a great toss to win as England piled on the agony, with both Michael Vaughan as well as Kevin Peterson getting a lot of runs. In fact, around the 75th over, England were 250 for the loss of just 2 wickets. And as an Indian fan, it almost felt like once again it was shaping up to be that sort of test match and that sort of series where the Indian bowlers will struggle to keep up with the English batters, and they were basically taking the game away, dominating, playing a lot of strokes, and it was tough to contain these batters. However, India ensured that late in the day they were able to get strikes via RP Singh as well as Anil Kumble, who got the wickets of Michael Vaughan and Paul Collingwood. This ensured that India were able to even out that final session and eventually the day, as England got to 268 for 4 during stumps. But what was to be even more exciting was the next morning. The second day's play saw India take that second new ball, swing it a lot both ways. RP Singh, Zair Khan, as well as Srishant, all of them got the ball to swing and were bowling good areas, and this eventually ended very badly for the English side. They crumbled under the pressure and good bowling that India had set up and eventually fell for 298 all out. England ended up losing their last 6 wickets for just 30 runs. It was a collapse that should have given India confidence, and I'm sure it did, but India were not able to reflect this in their first batting innings when they came out to bat. Despite Wasim Jaffer holding one end up, scoring 58 of 156 deliveries, toiling away, it did not seem like the Indian batters were fully in tune with the conditions, and the pitch had also deteriorated just a little bit. It led to India getting all out for 201 and England getting a lead. Having got a lead of 97 runs, England continued to apply the pressure, with Kevin Peterson scoring a brilliant third innings test century. He managed to take his side to 282. This is where RP Singh took 5 wickets, Zair Khan getting 4 wickets, and the England innings ended with them setting a target of 379 for India to chase in that 4th innings. And now in terms of the number of runs that India had to get, this seemed like a fairly gettable total because they had 379 runs to get and they had more than 1.5 days to come and get this total. In fact, India even started off very well, getting to 137 for 3 at the end of day 4. Both Dinesh Karthik and Saurav Ganguly were not out and they were looking solid at their stay on the crease. But as is expected in a test match, a total of 379 is never going to be easy to chase, more so on a fifth day pitch where the conditions were starting to get worse to bat in, and this was also reflective in how India kept losing wickets at regular intervals. Eventually, it reached a stage where India were 145 for 5 when Dhoni came into bat, and from there on, nobody was able to really stick with Dhoni, and it was a lone battle from Mahendra Singh Dhoni's end. In fact, it came down to the wire with India being 263 for 9 and England just 1 wicket away from victory. Now, what's important to note is that India could have also very easily gone on and lost this test match. But as the weather gods would have it, there was overcast conditions and the light that was there for play was getting extremely bad. In fact, the umpires even halted the match a couple of times and it seemed all but certain that the players would go off. However, play kept going on and Mahendra Singh Dhoni tried to farm the strike as much as possible. Eventually, that last wicket was able to get to 282 for the loss of 9 wickets when the umpires finally decided that the teams can no longer play in this bad light. And that is how India were able to secure a draw in that first test match. And you can call it luck and all of that, but at the end of the day, India were still managed to able to eke out a draw from a situation where they were very likely staring at a defeat in that first test. And I think that it was this confidence that the Indian team was able to take into that second test match that took place in Nottingham. In the same manner as was the case in Lords, here too in Nottingham the conditions were overcast, there were in fact rains and there was also a delay to the start of the match itself. India won a really good toss and they put England into bat, making the most best use of the current conditions that would aid swing bowling, and it would also be tough for the English batters to be able to come out and bat peacefully against the swinging bowlers. All of England's informed batters from the first test match, that's Andrew Strauss, Michael Vaughan and Kevin Peterson, were back in the shed in no time. In fact, by tea on day 1, the English team was very delicately poised at 94 for 3. With India already being in control of the day, the post-tea session was even better as England stumbled to 169 for 7 by the end of the first day's play. The next day was also no different as when England came out to bat, they eventually crumbled under the pressure of the Indian bowlers who bowled extremely well, Zair Khan and Anil Kumble in particular, who were able to clean out the tail, and England ended that innings on 198. What followed next was some of the finest opening batting that we've seen from an Indian pair batting in the English conditions. And in fact, this was a series defining moment because the way in which Dinesh Karthik and Wasim Jaffer batted dictated how the English team would respond and how India was able to eventually go on and win this series. Both Dinesh Karthik and Wasim Jaffer batted with a lot of concentration. They played and missed at quite a few deliveries. They edged quite a few deliveries. In between all of the edging and the missing, Dinesh Karthik and Wasim Jaffer played some lovely strokes through the covers and it was a joy to watch. They absolutely dominated the fast bowling attack of James Anderson, Chris Tremlett as well as Ryan Sidebottom. Eventually, these two put on 147 runs for that opening wicket. Both Wasim Jaffer and Dinesh Karthik eventually fell on either side of tea, but they had already done the damage. The kind of base that they had established was key for the Indian batters, the experienced middle order with the likes of Sachin and Ganguly coming in and steering the ship to a good total. With Sachin scoring 91, Ganguly scoring 79 and late contributions from Anil Kumble as well as VVS Lakshman in a 50-run stand, it ensured that India eventually got to 481. A big total, especially when you see that England was balled out for just 198. However, unlike that first innings where the English batters just folded like a pack of cards, that was not the case when England came out for the second time to bat. In fact, they batted with a lot of application and Michael Vaughan, the captain, played an absolute captain's knock, scoring 124 and eventually they got England to 287. But when Michael Vaughan's wicket fell at 287, from there was a bit of a mini collapse and England found themselves at 304 for 6, and not long after, thanks to Anil Kumble's ability to clean up the tail in so many of the innings that we've seen, England were bundled out for 355. And despite India bowling well and getting England wickets consistently, what's really important to note is the workload on these bowlers. Out of the 104 overs that England took to reach 355, 66 of these overs were bowled by just the three pacers in Srishant, RP Singh and Zair Khan. Zair Khan was once again the pick of the bowlers, getting a fifer. And of course from there it was India's match to lose really, because they needed just a little over 70 runs to chase down with 10 wickets in hand. The opening hour of play was tough with Chris Tremlett breathing absolute fire. In fact, he was the only player from the English team to get the 3 wickets that fell, but India were eventually able to weather the storm and chase this total down winning the match by 7 wickets. A funny incident that also occurred in this second test match was something known as the jelly bean incident, where at the time when Zair Khan was batting on the crease, there was a supposed jelly bean at the crease, and apparently there were English fielders who were constantly throwing jelly beans in and around the crease to distract Zair Khan. Now their frustration was obviously warranted because of how well Zair Khan had bowled through that match, getting a 9-wicket haul. With the third and final test match scheduled to be at the Oval, the English team was looking to save face. They would have had the extra motivation to come in and win that test match, especially because India was one up in the test series. Michael Vaughan had also spoken about how they'd done this before, where they'd come from behind and won a series, and so he backed his boys to be able to replicate the same. However, what was to follow was one of the best batting displays that we've seen from any test side, leave alone India. On a rare sunny morning at the Oval, India won the toss and elected to bat first. The openers once again made merry, with both Dinesh Karthik and Wasim Jaffer getting starts. Jaffer was dismissed for 35, but India by then had put on 62 for that opening wicket. In came Rahul Dravid, and both Dinesh Karthik and Rahul Dravid were able to stitch a really good partnership, taking India to 185 for 1. And this is how the entire day and that entire innings continued. Each batter that would get dismissed would get replaced by yet another batter who would come in and start scoring runs as if this was an under 12 game. By the end of day 2, the Indian cricket fans were all over the place, with India having scored 664, and even after that they put England into bat and got England at 24 for 1 by day 2 at stumps. It was a record-breaking innings for India, and to this day is the highest score by an Indian test team in England. With them scoring 664, 9 out of the 11 batters that batted in this innings, all of them scored 35 plus, and Anil Kumble very famously getting his maiden test 100, 110 at the Oval. By batting in this fashion, India had definitely ruled out any chance of England possibly winning that test match. Having played out 2 days and scored 664, it was only a matter of whether or not India could close out this match with a victory. Despite England coming out with great intent to bat, climbing the mountain of 664 runs was always going to be a daunting task. And this is how it eventually unfolded, with all of the bowlers once again putting in performances, chipping in with wickets, and England were all out for 345. India had a massive lead of 319 runs. That's not something that you see every day on a scorecard of Test cricket, especially between two superpowers of Test cricket. But from there, India went on to make 180 for 6 before declaring the innings just around tea on day 4. India had set an improbable 500-run target for the England team to chase down in a little over 1 day's play. And despite Kevin Pietersen coming in that final innings, scoring once again at a brisk rate, getting a brilliant century, it was never going to be enough. England needed multiple batters to step up, which they did, but not to the extent that would help them reach 500 runs. England eventually ended that match with a draw, scoring 369 for the loss of 6 wickets. And just like that, after 21 long years, the last time being 1986, India came to England in 2007 and were able to close out that series with a victory. There were a lot of heroes on that tour, of course the legendary batting lineup that India had, but more importantly, the 4 bowlers who were consistently able to step it up, get a lot of wickets, and the openers who cannot not be mentioned. Dinesh Karthik, the youngster at the time that he was the highest scorer for the Indian team, scoring 263 runs at an average of 43. It was also a complete team effort, as throughout that tour there was just the one test century for an Indian batter, and that too from the bat of Anil Kumble. Even the timing of performances like MS Dhoni stepping up in that first test match in the final innings to help India play out a draw, or beat the kind of performances that Zair Khan or RP Singh put in to ensure that England were all out. Zair Khan eventually ended with 18 wickets in that series and was ably supported by Anil Kumble, who got 14 wickets, RP Singh who got 13 wickets, and Srishant who got 9 wickets. Now while this was a victory that happened 21 years ago, India has the chance to once again create history by winning this test series against England. They can take a lot of cues from that 2007 side, and while there are a lot of differences in how teams operate today and how test cricket is played, the simple basics like India being able to get 20 wickets, with the openers being able to score a lot of runs and bat out oppositions, that is what is important and something that the current Indian team can definitely take cues from. In a year where India had suffered that horrible ODI World Cup loss, a series victory like the one in England was necessary to ensure that cricket continued to get the boost that it did in the country of India. This has been a video on the 2007 India vs England series and how the events panned out, with India scoring a historic victory. Thank you so much for watching. All of our links are in the description. We also have an event that's coming up on the 5th of July from 11 am to 2 pm at the Draper Startup House in Koramangala. It is going to be a discussion on Test cricket, the current India-England series, and there's going to be a lot of fun quizzes, goodies for everybody involved. So definitely we'll see you there. Link is in our pinned comment, also across our socials. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.